So let's take it step by step. We'll start with how the Astros have handled it first. I think the precedent has been set by Jim Crane that you can just make excuses.
Yeah.
So I think, number one, we need to take a look at Jim Crane because his press conference was an absolute nightmare.
The whole press conference
was terrible. He literally said, I don't think the World Series was impacted by the sign stealing. And then 30 seconds later, reporter asked him that question. He's like, oh, I didn't say that. Like, first off, how tone deaf do you have to be to just miss that? So that's one. Jim Crane said a bad leadership. Two, Astros players just grow up. Like, they're going to be upset if you're the Dodgers or the Yankees, like, put yourself in their situation. Let's say that team cheats you out of, that's subjective or not, but let's say they cheat. Like, they do the same thing as you did. How mad would you be?
Yeah.
You'd be really ticked off. So that's number two. Three, Carlos Correa.
Woo.
For anyone, if my Benchwarmers Redemption audience knows, I'm the biggest Carlos Correa fan in the world.
Yes.
He's just a phenomenal baseball player.
Sebastian's 38th best shortstop in baseball.
He's just the most talented. We talk about him like he's the next Michael Jordan. He's great. Hats off, first ballot Hall of Famer. Carlos Correa, he talks a lot of smack, cursing out Cody Bellinger. When Carlos Correa, even with the sign stealing, didn't do squat in the playoffs. He didn't do squat. He hit below the Mendoza line in the playoffs. He hit 173 in the postseason.
Well, the biggest thing to me is it's just like, he comes out and he's just like, how, he talks about the commissioner's report. Well, obviously these guys don't have reading comprehension because, this is not what the commissioner report said. It's like, okay, just because the commissioner's report doesn't say that does not mean that it didn't happen. That's just what they were able to find out. And it's like, oh yeah, how do they have the audacity to think that we would be cheating in 2019? The report says we didn't. It's like, how do people have the audacity to think that? Because you literally cheated, and people tend to push the limits when they cheat. They usually don't. It's like, you know what? We're good now. We're fine. We don't have to cheat anymore. So yeah, maybe they didn't cheat in 2019, but you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to defend himself in any way because I feel like they feel like some sort of slight, especially maybe if you didn't cheat in 2019. But you know what? This is what you have to take with all of this. But this is like the natural consequence. You may have gotten immunity from punishment from the MLB, but the natural consequences, a lot of guys have lost a ton of respect for you, and you are going to be the most hated team in baseball going forward for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And is that fair to some of the guys on that team that were not part of those teams? No. Is it even fair that you're judged on that kind of level? Maybe if you were an Astros player that wasn't really part of it, because I do think it's hard to speak up in that scenario. I think that's one thing that's a little bit underrated. But with how all this has gone down, people are going to dislike you. They're going to speak out. You know what the Astros should have done? They should have been more apologetic. The words "I cheated" or "we cheated" were uttered like maybe once or twice. The actual owning, it's like, why did you do it? Oh, we did it because we wanted to gain an advantage. I haven't heard anyone say that either. It's just like, it's obvious. If you own up to it, maybe the blowback is a little bit worse initially, but it helps you get past it. And now we're at a point where it's like you're defending yourself. You're doing the worst thing possible PR-wise.
Right.
Like just apologize, put your head down, and try to win as many games as you can in 2020. Because that's probably the best medicine for the situation for them. And that's all you can do. Every time you talk about it and try to defend yourself, you just make yourself look worse. And that's the biggest thing. So I understand what he was trying to do. He probably thought it was a good idea in his head, but it talk about tone deaf. It is probably the most tone deaf thing. Nobody wants to hear your excuses. And he was going like inning by inning of the World Series of like, well, maybe we're cheating in this inning.
Right.
Maybe we're cheating in this inning, but we didn't do it in here because of this, and that. It's like nobody wants to hear that, man. Just
runner on second.
Yeah, runner on second. Yeah, it's
Repetition.
just like, and the signs, it's like, okay, we get it, man. We get it. You can't do it every single time. Nobody even thinks they did it every single game, every single time. But yeah, how do the players have the audacity to think so? It's because you already cheated. And I'm sorry, like you've lost trust from other players and you've lost respect. That's the natural consequence of this entire thing. So and you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think Dusty Baker is handled. They should maybe take a little lead from him because he's their manager, number one.
Yeah.
And two, I think he's handled it appropriately. I mean, he even made a joke about the situation that I kind of like. Now, if the player said that, it would be a whole nother thing.
But he's been.
I thought that joke was pretty funny.
He's been more apologetic than some of the players have, and he wasn't even a part of it. It just again, like I think their PR firm was kind of sitting there and saying, okay, we can't just like own up and admit to everything, because once we do, everybody has to. You don't want to just call people, especially if like people start calling people out. So it's like, okay, just say the minimum and try to move on. But that's not enough from people. And everyone's like, oh, well, they said they're sorry. Look at the transcript. They said they're sorry and they want to move on. But these are apologies or half-assed. Like, we wouldn't take these from our friends and family.
Right.
If people apologize like that.
I mean, you look at the tone of it. Just like look at the tone, the sincerity of it. It's not there.
It's like, watch it. Like, in your gut, that's not a good apology.
And Justin Verlander.
Justin Verlander, who talks about everything. Alex Bregman, who has something to say about everything, also said his favorite unwritten rule in baseball is when someone gets hit with a pitch for doing something dumb.
I never forget the back and forths Alex Bregman had with Trevor Bauer. Those were
Trevor,
so good.
Justin Verlander, who condemned people who use steroids and who went out and like, these people are cheating our game. It has nothing to say now. No, I mean that's like people don't like. And that's the thing, and people are like, oh well, how is this any different?
Forget about your favorite.
How is this any different from steroids? Well, here's the thing: steroids was rampant throughout all of baseball. At one point, there was a point in time where at least one guy on your team was using, and you knew about it. Not everybody is sign stealing. You can say, oh, other people cheat. The Astros did it to a level that was so far and away above everyone else that they got caught. And yeah, maybe the Yankees and the Red Sox were also doing it too, but the paranoia around the Astros was so high. And here's the one thing that I saw the other day I thought was interesting. Rob Manfred had the opportunity in 2017 when stuff was being brought to him by people, to be like, if you continue to do this, if anyone gets caught, you are banned from baseball. And you know what people would have done? They would have stopped doing it because it wouldn't have been worth it. But that's the one thing I really blame Rob Manfred for.
Rob Manfred's a terrible commissioner. He's changed the game for many.
He acted like
the three-batter minimum is going to be an absolute disaster.
He acted like what he is a lawyer. He did not come at this like, you know what Adam Silver did during this is a little bit different. Adam Silver during the Don Sterling situation, he did not sit there and say, oh, we're afraid to get sued. We're afraid a union's going to come after us or whatever. He was like, no, Don Sterling's banned for life. Try and counter this, please. Because here's the thing. If they would have had a worse punishment for the Astros, you know how many people in the Players Union would have opposed it?
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's just like this was the time to take advantage of that. And what he should have done is done something in 2017, because he had stuff brought to him about this, and they didn't do enough of an investigation about it. And the reason they had to grant the immunity to the players was because by the time they did their investigation, if they didn't, they weren't going to get any information. Because if you're Marwin Gonzalez, why do you snitch on yourself and then receive a year-long suspension? That's not in your best interest. So that's why they had to do the immunity stuff, especially for players who weren't on the Astros. What if you're Dallas Keuchel and you give them information and now all of a sudden you're suspended for a year? That's why they had to do it. If they would have been more proactive about it, they would have never had to do all this immunity stuff and have all this other stuff happen. So when everyone's like, oh, he had no other choice and he can't strip the World Series because it's unprecedented, it's like this stuff, we wouldn't be in this scenario if they would have been more upfront about it and taken care of it earlier. And that's what I'm upset at Rob Manfred for. And he has to make these decisions now because he messed up in the past. And so he deserves just as much blame as anyone. And then the tone deaf of calling the trophy just like a piece of metal. I mean, it's just like, I'm glad Justin Turner came out and like roasted him. Like, I guess he's never won.
I mean, he's a terrible. I mean, you see Trevor Bauer's comments on.
Yeah, and you know what, Trevor Bauer, like
your favorite, by the way. He's a great dude. You should have a beer with him.
I mean, I would like to. No, I don't agree with everything Trevor Bauer says, but he at least is not afraid to say things. And he has in
those 1-year contracts,
and his reason for signing 1-year contracts is probably my favorite thing in all of sports. But yeah, I mean, he just roasted him. He should, and they're getting roasted players. And when Mike Trout has something to say about it, doesn't say anything controversial, right. Anything ever in general. I mean, they deserve everything that's coming at them. And what Carlos Correa did, especially Correa, going out of his way to do these interviews, trying to defend it, I'm sure half the team was like, dude, what are you doing?
especially when you're the most overrated player in the game of baseball that hasn't done squat. Imagine he hit 173 in the postseason, knowing what pitch was coming. I know the investigation said they couldn't find it in the 2019. I'm gonna presume they did it because I think everyone does. And Carlos Correa hit 173, knowing what pitch was coming. You know, how embarrassing that is. But no, he's the top 5 shortstop in the game of baseball. I mean, we'd rather have, must have Correa over Trevor Story, I'd rather have, Adalberto Mondesi over Carlos Correa.
I wouldn't rather have Mondesi.
Oh, I would. I'd rather.
That's ridiculous. Anyways, we're
No,
not.
it's not.
No,
It's not ridiculous. Carlos Correa hits 7th in the lineup, knows what every pitch is coming, and he hits 260.
Carlos Correa is such a better offensive player than Mondesi. It's not even close.
Well, Adalberto Mondesi also doesn't know what pitch is coming.
You know what? At the end of the day, I'd still rather have Correa. But whatever. We can talk about your shortstop rankings another time. But I just the one thing is the MLB has to be so glad the Nationals won the World Series, because if the Astros would have won the World Series, as Patrick, which they were so close to doing, and by the way, bang foul poles, not trash cans. They had because and the Nationals, what's been interesting about all this from my perspective is they're like, yeah, we got so many warnings about this going in that they basically were like, if they did it, they had to have gone through so many loopholes to try to do it in the World Series, because the Nationals took every precaution to make sure that it wasn't happening, because they got Alex Cora went out of their way and told them that it was probably going to happen, which is, it's because it's just and I think, what I think happened? I think it started off as something a little small with the Astros, and I think it grew to a point that made a lot of people really uncomfortable.
Yeah, of course.
I think for a guy
the culture there was terrible.
I think a couple people didn't mind when it was a little thing they did every once in a while, but I think it got pushed, and I don't know by who, and then we'll never really find out, to be honest. But it got pushed to a point, and then there were probably players.
I'll tell you who I think pushed it. Carlos Beltran pushed it.
I think what happened is, I think, could I believe that somebody like Jose Altuve was like, I don't want to be a part of this? Sure. I think there were probably a decent amount of the guys on this team.
Correa said it was Altuve, Reddick, and Tony Kemp are the only 3 that refused it.
Could I see that? Yes, because there are some people who, but it's hard when you're in a situation to also what are you gonna rat on your teammates? Never. So that's the one thing I'm but so we can never know that, and so even if Jose Altuve didn't, and then the whole the thing of wearing the buzzers, it's how could anyone ever think we did that? It's well, again, you already cheated, so this isn't that far of a concept. Now, if someone would have come out and said the Cleveland Indians wear buzzers, we'd have been all right, that's kind of a unprecedented thing to say about them. They have no evidence of this. But with the Astros, you can't rule anything out. Now, do I believe they were wearing buzzers? I don't know. But the thing is, I can't just emphatically say no.
And I think that's the right opinion to have.
We
don't know. I don't think we will.
And again,
ever
just
know.
because the commissioner's report was just we didn't find anything, doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that in their investigation.
And AJ Hinch said in the interview, he's I'd like to believe the commissioner's findings. He didn't say no.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think it's just everyone keeps going back to the report. It's just if you truly didn't do something, then come out and say it. At least Carlos Correa was yeah, Jose Altuve specifically didn't do it. If you're gonna make claims, at least be specific about it. Right. So it's been a complete disaster PR wise. How they've handled this situation. What's funny is I think the Astros are still going to be really good this year.
They had the ball club to do so. That's for sure.
Yeah, their
lineup 1-6 is pretty good.
And here's the thing,
and then number 7 is pretty overrated.
Their pitching last year, their bullpen, which has nothing to do with all the stuff that was really good. And I still think Verlander and Greinke. I think a guy like Jesse James being a starter now, I think he's going to have a good year. I think it's really hard when you get pushed around back and forth from reliever to starter.
Francis Martis suspension is a big blow for them too.
Well, I think it's the second time he got suspended.
Yeah, he's at 162.
Yeah, so and they still have a really despite everything, they still have a really good lineup. Whatever you think about them, Jose Altuve, whatever you think about the cheating scandal, was a really good hitter before all of this. A lot of their guys are still really good, and I think they will have something to prove. The AL West is tougher this year. I think the A's are always going to be good. The Angels, I think, will be better, but I think they'll probably be closer to like 80-ish wins than. And the Rangers, I think, will be better too. So the Mariners, they'll make some trades.
Poor Seattle. Poor Seattle, man. Yeah. The one franchise that just can't get out of their own way. Scott Service, just I absolutely love Scott Service. I actually like Jerry DiPoto. I think he's doing the right thing and blowing this thing up and trying to build it up the right way. They got some nice young pieces there. Justice Sheffield, former Indian. I really like him a lot. I think they got a great return for Cano and Diaz.
Oh yeah, of course. Their problem is they've done this like rebuild like a couple of times, and there was a point in time where like, the Mariners are going to be really good. Like 10 years ago, like you know who they have coming up? Dustin Ackley and Justin Smoke. Right. And so it's just like prospects. That's the one thing
Dustin Ackley, man, he was a surefire.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and so that's the one thing with prospects is when people are like, oh, could we trade this guy for Mookie Betts or Chris Bryant? It's like, oh yeah. Because
well, how many years though?
I would trade a decent prospect for a year of Mookie. Like, think about this. There's actually like Mookie Betts could put up like 8 WAR.
Would you trade a top 10 prospect for 1 year of Mookie Betts?
No, but that's not what they gave up.
Okay, yeah, right.
But I'm saying especially, and here's the thing: if you're the Dodgers, right? You know why the Dodgers were able to do that trade? Their farm system's loaded. Mm-hmm. Like this didn't affect them in any way. They didn't trade anyone they didn't want to trade.
Right.
And so, because here's the thing with prospects. Like look at like the Braves right now. They almost have so many that not enough of them are ever going to be able to all be on the roster at the same time. You get prospects because you get a surplus, and then they're valuable trade chips, and you want to trade them for proven guys. Because it's something, especially because so that's like the whole point of building a great farm system is eventually you will trade some of them, and eventually some of them will come up. But especially in baseball, it's just so hard to predict.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying every time, because you can't just trade every single one of your prospects for a proven player. But at the end of the day, I think, it's worth a lot. Like Chris Bryant, like 2 years of Chris Bryant could be really valuable for a team who's contending right now. Like he's one of like the 10 or 15 best players in baseball. And so,
I think Nolan Arenado would also fall in that same category.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And you can't just like hug your prospects. If you're a team competing. There's sometimes you got to reload at the end of the day. But and we don't really even see top guys get traded. I mean, the last top 10 guy that got traded was Lewis Brinson. You really don't think they're doing that over and over again for Christian Yelich?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing is like in sports, a lot of the times trading the superstar players rarely works out for the team who traded them unless they get some amazing package back, And
Yelich had 5 years of control at the time.
Yeah. And was on a team friendly. It was almost like
it was a great deal.
Yeah, so
amazing deal. Fit right into Milwaukee.
Even if you look at something like the NBA, and we can transition to that, the Lakers gave up a crap ton to get Anthony Davis, but you know what? It's worth it.
It's worth it if they win a championship.
It's worth it if they're competing for one, which is what you have to do. Like they're not like I like Brandon Ingram, I like Lonzo Ball, I actually really like Josh Hart. If they didn't have another star next to LeBron and also getting veteran guys next to him, they wouldn't be where they are right now.
I would agree with that.
And so like it's like in Anthony Davis, like here's the thing in basketball, right? And this is the same thing with trading prospects, with trading young guys. Basketball, the whole point is to get 2 guys who are like probably top 15, top 20 players. If you don't have that, you're not competing for championships. End of story. It's nice to have like a bunch of really young players, but like that doesn't do that much for you. Like the point of the NBA is to get it. And so let's transition to
real quickly. I want to ask you a question. Carlos Correa, does he hit above 250 this year?
I mean, I more care about like his like OPS and on base and slugging.
All right, what do you predict?
He'll hit about 250. I don't think has he ever hit below 250 in a year?
He'll hit below 250.
Now the one thing he did is what was it? 2018 he had like the shoulder problem, and so he hit for a lot less power, I believe.
Yeah.
He's always like offense. Here's the thing about shortstop. A lot of teams will just take what they want, whatever they can get offensively. Like having a guy like Lindor is like that's why he's so valuable. It's not because he has the highest like OPS in the league. It's when you can have like a 870 OPS at a shortstop. That's ridiculous. When like the average shortstop has like a 700 or is a below average offensive player. So that's why having a really good shortstop is valuable, because if you have a really good offensive one and he can play defense, it's like that's, you're hitting, that's what like WAR comes into play. Like you are way above average at what you do.